think we're live now. Had some technical difficulties, and I got to figure this out. I could not get my camera and my microphone on the computer to come on. And so here you're seeing the green screen behind me, which was supposed to give me my virtual background. Now instead, you're seeing a little bit of the clutter up there because I'm working in my daughter's room. She passed away in December, and I'm trying to make use of the space. But I was trying to do the live from my computer. And, we ran into this a couple of weeks ago. I started the live and the camera would not respond. The microphone would not respond. Wound up with Kevin Tumlinson just sitting there waiting on me. And I started a new one, which means that the scheduled one then wasn't showing up. So I don't know. I got to figure out this technicality here. So anyway, what I'm looking for is I've made some notes here about something I wanted to talk about today. Anybody joining us, live, or if you're seeing the replay, my name's Donn King. Nice to meet you. There's all kinds of things that we do here at King's Chronicles. Most of it oriented around the writing and the communication stuff that I do. I've done a long time podcast called The Alignment Show. And I think the mission of that continues, even with these more uh, casual things. And hey, Kevin, I see Kevin Hall has joined us live. So thanks, Kevin. Um, the tagline for The Alignment Show is living your values to value your life. And I think as I look at all the stuff that I do, that all kind of comes together. And so I knew that we wanted to connect today, sometime Sunday afternoon. Didn't know exactly when. In fact, I think this was originally scheduled at 5:10, and I was still out of the house at 5:10, so we rescheduled it to 7:10. Wasn't quite sure what I wanted to talk about. And then I came across something, and I just wanted to share it with you a little bit here. You may know the work of the writing of Richard Rohr, last name Rohr. And Rohr is an interesting read in a lot of ways. He's done a lot of writing, and some of it's a little hard to get through. But I stumbled across an article on pathos.com, and in the show notes that will accompany this, I still call them show notes, even though, it's not podcast. I'll put a link, to the things that we're talking about here. But the article, and I've lost track of it right now, it's basically, something about your purpose in life, and the idea being that your life can be in two segments, and how different it is when you're young versus older. Based on Richard Rohr's book, and let's see the title of it. Get it in front of me right here. Trying to work with notes at the same time. It's called Falling Upward, a spirituality for the two halves of life. Now, the insight that I'm having here is not particularly religious in nature, even though we're talking about spirituality. I think Rohr does a really good job of getting at what we might call practical spirituality, and so he's come out with a revised edition. 3 years old at this point, so it's not recent, but I've got the earlier edition. And so this whole thing started with me just trying to determine, is the revised updated edition worth me paying for when I've already got the earlier edition? And without digging too much into contrasting them, and again, I'll link to the book in the show notes. By the way, since I had to switch to the phone at the last minute, I don't have it propped here, so it's a little wiggly. Let me see if I can get this thing propped on something here. Okay, y'all bear with me. I know that's not looking great on the video, but this might work. Oh, no, that's not going to do it. Okay, we'll just go with it. That's one of the things with Substack Live. It's very casual. Okay. Anyway, I realized as I was digging through the comparison that a better question would be not which version, but how do you read Roar at all? Richard Rohr, and again, if you joined us a little late, Rohr, and even deeper. One of the things that's different about the two editions, by the way, for whatever it's worth, second edition is actually much shorter. It's more boiled down. And I'm not sure how I feel about that because part of Rohr's style is he's not linear. He repeats himself on purpose because he's circling ideas. And so I'm not sure that updated is better that way just because it's more succinct. It's also a little more oriented towards, well, what should I do with this? Of course, our culture is kind of aimed that way. But I realized if you're reading Richard Rohr at all, a better approach is not so much what should I do as a result of this, but how does this change my experience? Now, as a writer and a speaker, I've realized I'm really always interested in that sort of thing. And I know that a lot of audiences want to know, just give me step one, step two, step three. What should I do with this? I understand that, and it's okay. But I think that there's something a little deeper here. Roar is not so much trying to explain, but to reframe how you see. Can't remember who said it originally to give proper credit, but one of those people that educators quote a lot that education is not so much about seeing new things, but seeing things anew, fresh eyes. And that calls out to me. And the core idea that grabbed me as I was looking through this stuff is a phrase: transformation through disorientation. Now, that's a lot of what Rohr's book is about. So there's a contrast there between the first half and the second half of life. Not that either is wrong, it's just a natural difference. Contrast what we usually want: clarity, direction, steps, progress. Rohr's model is about confusion and loosening, unlearning, re-seeing. Not confusion in a bad way, but making use of the confusion. So let's make it concrete here. Some of the stuff that he talks about. What does disorientation actually look like? And by the way, I realize there's an irony here. We're talking about making something concrete. I'm not trying to turn this into a self-help thing. In a way, that's part of the criticism that we could make of the article that started all of this. Rather, it's more important to sit with the tension, to sit with the confusion. So if things that used to work don't feel like they do anymore, that's easy to happen in today's culture and society because the reality is, as a writer, for example, I'm aware that some marketing tactics that used to work don't work anymore. This is different. It's more like roles feel thinner, certainty feels forced. I'm less interested in winning arguments that I could win. There's a quiet sense of there's more, but I can't name what it is. And that is not dramatic, it is subtle. It is ongoing. Hold on just a second. My wife is trying to call me and she's forgotten I'm doing this. Okay. Um, what is our instinct here? Uh, our instinct is probably to fix it or to clarify it or to resolve it. Roar's instinct, or what he recommends to us, is don't rush past it. This is the work, it's not an interruption of the work. I think that's pretty good insight. There's a key reframe here. It's not, if you're feeling that, if you're experiencing that, it's not something breaking down. It may be something being outgrown. Now, one of the problems that I have with the article that started all this thinking is the digging into the idea of the purpose of life. And there's a common idea, that we have about finding your purpose. That kind of feels external, directional, achievement oriented. Richard Rohr's contrast is more along the lines of live from your true self. It's about uncovering, not acquiring, about becoming, not achieving. It's not that achievement is bad, it's just that in that second half of life, things tend to shift that way, you see. It shifts from what should I do to who is the I doing it all? So, what actually changes? We're not so much talking about changing behavior, which I think is where a lot of our self help focuses. It's more about changing experience. Looking at my notes here again, we go as Rohr contrasts the first and the second half of life. We go from pressure to achieve to permission to have the experience you're having. There's less need to get everything right, especially less need to get everything right the way other people would think of it. We move from a need for control to curiosity, less fixing, more noticing. And as I get older, that whole noticing thing becomes that much more important. There is a shift from fulfilling a role to a presence. I mean, just being present, less performing, more being there. And so our actions don't necessarily change all that much, but the inner posture can change significantly. Now, I've mentioned this article, and I do see from my notes that the author's last name is, I think I'm pronouncing this right, Rapsas. It's Rapsas. Again, I'll put a link in the notes that go along with this. But there's some aspects of it that are helpful. I mean, after all, it got me back into looking at Rohr and looking at it a little differently. The article is strong on the emotional entry point, recognizing that a lot of us wrestle with restlessness, a sense of longing, not being sure what it means. There's helpful language in the article for recognizing growth that comes out of this process. But I have to say, I think the article organizes Rohr's thinking, especially in this book, into more of a self help framework and implies smoother progress in the whole approach than Rohr does. One of the things Rapsis gives is a list of signs of progress. Well, there's still that idea of progress, you see, whereas for Rohr, it's really more about an ongoing process, not progress, but process that's often messy and unclear. And to put it in more modern parlance, that's not a bug, it's a feature. And so there is a hidden trap here. Rohr might talk about the true self, for example. And there is a danger of turning the true self into yet another achievement, a goal to be chased. And we can wind up chasing authenticity the same way that we chased success in that younger half of life. And so for Rohr, the whole idea of falling upwards, it's about less striving and more allowing, less constructing and more noticing. And so, we have a lot of writers who follow us here. There's a simple way to engage here. It's not about a checklist. This is just an orientation kind of thing. When something feels off, instead of how do I fix this, a better question might be, what might I be outgrowing? I'll confess, I'm oriented towards how do I fix this? I want to feel better. So to be able to sit with the discomfort is a key here. What might I be outgrowing? This has special meaning, I think, to me because, again, as regular readers, listeners know, uh, we had a severely disabled daughter that we cared for 22 years. She passed away in the middle of December. And while, of course, we are still dealing with the grieving process, there's also a life management aspect here. I mean, for over 20 years, when somebody asked me, "What do you want?" my standard response was, "What difference does it make? I just have to do what needs doing right now. I can't even think about what I want." And so I'm kind of doing the same sort of thing that maybe people in their early 20s do. And, I'm 50 years past that. Okay. But still, it's something to be asking. Okay. Um, and I've been doing a lot of thinking along those lines, which is what drew me to that whole idea about finding your purpose. But when reading Roar, maybe instead of asking, "What should I do?" the better question is, if this is true, how would this moment feel better? Okay, so, this is important, I think, for writers. Writing is a great tool for thinking. And I have found when there's something that's bugging me like this, writing about it is one of the ways that I process. And I see that writing often comes from disorientation, not from clarity. Writing can be, seeking clarity. And one of the things I think I need to let go of is striving for the clarity. Maybe. The best insights come before things are fully resolved, while we're still living with the tension. And so this might be something useful for anybody who comes across this. Kevin, I think, is still here live. Anybody that sees the replay, you've got permission. You don't have to package everything neatly. You can write from the in between. So, what might be valuable here? It's kind of standard with any kind of a speech or webinar or workshop or whatever to end with a CTA, a call to action. And that's sort of the opposite of what Roar is talking about. So, I don't want to talk about a call to action, but rather to think about what might be valuable in some of these insights. So, here are some ideas. One being, you don't need to chase more clarity right away. Clarity's fine, but especially in this second half of life, be comfortable being uncomfortable for a little while. Some of what feels like confusion may actually be growth. You may not need a new direction. You may just need a new way of seeing the direction you're already in. And so the goal might not be figuring life out, which I felt some pressure for, but rather becoming the kind of person who can live it more freely, live life more freely, even when it's not figured out. Now, again, people who have known me for a while, you know that I like this. Not coming to clarity, but it's taking some sometimes complex thoughts and putting them into what you might call bumper sticker form, because it's easier to remember it, and it's not substituting a simplistic formula for all of that, but rather coming up with a reminder. The old saying is, when you're up to your neck in alligators, it's hard to remember your objective was to drain the swamp. So this is something that can help you, maybe to keep it in front of you, that may help you if you're dealing with this sort of thing in your life. What if the moments where things feel least clear are the moments where the most important change is happening? At the very least, that removes some stress. Now, for those of you who might be watching the replay, you don't see the discussion, the chat that comes up. And I see something from Kevin that I wanted to share with you. This is Kevin Hall. He said, "For some reason, you sparked a quote to come to me. We grow too soon old and too late smart. And I've heard that one before, Kevin. That is a good one. I believe that it's a Dutch saying, but I believe we have more than two times in our life where we have these thoughts about what is my purpose. Absolutely. I mean, you have those thoughts multiple times through life. I think Roar does give us, though, a useful framework for, in a way, getting past even asking the question, which is part of where I have some issue with the article that started this. I don't think it's so much about finding the purpose. It's about allowing yourself to experience the confusion. Once again, I think we said this earlier. If not, we need to say it at least once and maybe say it again. Instead of thinking about progress, just think about process and allow that confusion. In any case, folks, appreciate you spending some time with me here on a Sunday afternoon, especially those here live. Thank you, Kevin. Kevin Hall, thanks for being here. And anybody else who might be seeing this live, I'm not sure that everybody shows up there in that that number. And if you see this on replay, feel free to make a comment. I always leave the comments open. I'd love to carry on the conversation. In fact, I'll probably tag 3 or 4 people to see if they want to have some insights on this and share with it. But I hope that this has been time well spent in one way or another as we continue to work to help you to live your values so you can value your life. And we'll see you next time here at King's Chronicles.